Let's talk some Saints. I want to talk specifically about one position here because I don't see a lot of activity and I don't also see a lot of depth. So let's start at linebacker. Demario Davis is still there. How much is left in that tank? I would imagine a reasonable amount.
Yeah, I think he's like maintained a couple of seasons. Um, I think he's still a good player. I don't think he's like the elite level player that he was. Um, yeah, especially like when he first signed with the Saints, like he was like a demon sideline to sideline. He was really, really good in coverage, and I think he's better like going upfield now, if that makes sense. Yeah, I don't think he's like the full field coverage linebacker that he used to be. That's okay, but like they can't just like count on him to be like a superstar anymore. And I think they pair him with a very solid linebacker in Pete Werner, but Pete's not somebody who's going to make a ton of plays. And he's played in the NFL for 4 years now. I think he's got like a half of a sack and one fumble recovery, and that's about it on like the impact plays. So yeah, I don't think it'd be a bad idea for them to prep for the future a little bit there. They've kind of tried with some of these like mid-late round linebackers, but like we don't know what Jalen Ford is. Like we don't know what DeMarco Jackson is. At this stage in their career, they've only been special teams guys. So I think it is an area where we'll see them at, especially if they do like play some 3-4 base. Like they're going to have 4 linebackers on the field. One of those guys can be a glorified defensive end, but I think they need to add still to that position.
Do you think that's a free agency deal? Do you think it's another try to take a 4th rounder and see if we can't make it hit? Do you think that the most likely scenario is that one of those special teamers kind of graduates, to use that term?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's any of that. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes around to number 9 and we hear the Saints are taking Jalen Walker or Jihad Campbell. I think either of those two guys could provide some value as off-ball linebackers while also giving you some pass rushing juice. So I think there's any number of ways this can go, but I do think that they're not done at the position, and I think it's important that they've shored up some of their other weaknesses, areas where I don't necessarily think they're completely done. I don't think signing Dylan Radins means they're not going to draft somebody who could be a potential starting offensive lineman for them. I don't think signing Brandon Cooks means they're out of potentially drafting Ted McMillan out of Arizona. I think they could still add another safety because Tyrann Mathieu in his mid-30s. It's not a position you have like your long-term future settled. But like linebacker is something that, as you've pointed out, they just haven't addressed it. They let Willie Gay walk in free agency. I think it's an incomplete position on the roster as it is.
Where would you put it on the needs list? I mean, there are a lot. We know. I mean, it's not necessarily considered a premium position. So where would you put it on their needs list?
Yeah, kind of like middle of the pack, yeah. Right? I think some of the stuff I was just talking about, some of those positions I still think are areas where I think they need to place more of their premium assets. I don't think they're done at receiver or potentially offensive line. I don't think they're done at corner because they signed Isaac Yiadom. I think they've got significant needs like across the board. I think they need a stand-up edge rusher. Somebody who they never would have acquired in the past, but can play a role in this Brandon Staley defense. So there's other things I would put ahead of it, but again, this roster is just so thin in terms of the depth that even though linebacker you can say they need to add there's just so many places they need to add right now on this roster.
Can I put words in your mouth a little bit here? You said do. This roster is, and you paused and you said thin. Is bad another word for that? I mean, you're going through all these needs they have. They need a player here. They need a player here. They need a player that we need. Is that too forward?
I think we're going to get a good sense of it this year, right? Because I think the Saints have been talking themselves into some of the talent they have on the roster, and I think you can adequately say yes, Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed are good receivers. Alvin Kamara is a good running back. Alontae Taylor's a really nice player. Chase Young potential to be a very good player in the right, nice pieces. Eric McCoy, I think, is a top 5 interior lineman in the NFL. He's really good. You really like what you saw at Talifuaga in his rookie year. So like, there's talent on the roster. There's top end talent on the roster. But like, was their 5-12 season last year strictly because of injuries and a bad head coach? Or like, are you going to add somebody who I think is pretty widely regarded as a good coach in Kellen Moore and a smart coach, and they're still going to have problems? I think this year is going to be kind of a referendum on really how bad this roster is. Is it thin in terms of depth, or is it thin in terms of real top end talent?
One of the drums
I just have a hard time. I just have a hard time answering that question. It's just, I think it remains to be seen.
I mean, it's all subjective anyway. One of the things that I've been talking about is, like, I read this website here and that website here, and I listen to that podcast, or I see this report on whatever channel, and most people consider the Saints, like, salary cap situation to be terrible and the roster to be getting old, and they're somewhere around like 20th to 26th in the league and this or that. And then I see the Saints continuously like trying to add players and like trying to sign 30-year-old wide receivers. And I'm just like, it seems like everybody else is going, well, they'll probably figure this out eventually. And then what they do suggests that they don't really think the way that everybody else on the outside thinks. And I'm just curious, what would it take for them to actually think that way?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I don't know if they're ever going to come to that assessment that other people are making of this team. I don't know if that's like really in Mickey Loomis's like DNA to think about things that way. And maybe it's because he's 68, and when he got here, the Saints were kind of a bad franchise, and they went through one of the worst seasons you could ever possibly go through in 2005, and he doesn't want to go back to the dark days. But I think you make a really legitimate argument that might be a necessity. And maybe we're wrong, like maybe they stay healthy this year. You look at the two teams in the Super Bowl. I mean, they had like all of their players, and the Saints clearly did not. Maybe they stay healthy and they're a much better team than we all think they are, and anybody's giving them credit for. But like, they've been talking themselves into this for years now. And it's just, it's like every year there's like a different reason for why it didn't work out. And I think it's going to be much harder next year if you have your handpicked coach. He comes in, he brings in a good staff. You retain the veteran quarterback to stay as competitive as possible. And if it still doesn't work out and you're still at best middle of the road NFL team, and at worst something really bad, then like, can you really make the argument that it's going to work anymore? Like, you had a hard time making that argument this year. And I think you can talk yourself into it a little bit when you see some of the moves. Justin Reed is a nice signing. Brandon Cooks is not going to be anybody's number one, but as a number 3, maybe that works out. Maybe they nail a draft class and they get some really good production out of those guys and turn things around quickly. But like, you're asking for a lot of things to happen.
No question about that. What's coming up for y'all? I know that the Combine is in the rearview mirror. Senior Bowl also in the rearview mirror. We're about a month out from the draft. So what's going on the Saints beat over there with y'all?
Yeah, we are compiling as much draft preview stuff as possible. Now that these pro days are starting to kind of get into full swing here. I mean, the Saints have been spread out all over the country scouting these guys. Their running backs coach was at like 5 different schools this week. Kellen Moore is at, I think, 3 already this week, maybe 4. They've got guys everywhere. And once that starts to die down, you start to get a little bit better sense of what they're looking at, what they need, and we're kind of, getting position by position, saying like who could fit what the Saints need. And then I'm working on something now. Should drop in a couple weeks that I'm very excited about. So stay tuned on that. Can't really say much more about it outside of that.
That's all right. We'll stay tuned. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, Luke.
Yes, sir.
Luke Johnson with The Advocate @ Luke Johnson on Twitter for all your Saints coverage. We appreciate him for stopping by each and every Thursday. Hey, it's Hunt. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.